Hey there folks, and welcome to this video. Over the past few days I've been covering Dakar Rally. I'll be covering the rest of the 2-week event on this channel as well. However, today I'm going to be making a particular video talking about a part of the route. Today they enter Riyadh, and on the way they'll be passing the Al-Attiyah prison. A place where activists such as Loujain Al-Hafloul are being detained. Al-Hafloul was an activist for, and continues to be an activist for, women's rights in Saudi Arabia, namely on issues such as women's right to drive, and is still imprisoned. Now, activists are calling for the boycotting of the Dakar Rally, and in addition to that are saying this is an example of sportswashing, where a regime with questionable records on issues such as human rights, for example, will host sporting events to promote themselves as some kind of liberal institution that people should be able to go on holiday to or watch sporting events in. And it's something that's applied to many countries around the world. Most prominently, it is countries in the Middle East, places like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates. But it also applies to places like China, Russia. And I can see the reason why people are doing these calls. I think generally these kinds of things do happen. I mean, I've seen some calls to boycott F1 when they announced a Streets of Jeddah race for this coming season. Formula E is going to be doing its season opener, the Diriyah E-Prix, and that's in about a month's time. And as a regime, in terms of human rights record generally, Saudi Arabia's records are atrocious. And that's where the allegations of sportswashing come from. You can see it as well if you look at the Football World Cup and it being hosted in Qatar, and the construction of the stadiums in Qatar, and the use of questionable, arguably slave labour in some cases. And this is something that really should be getting talked about more. Like, the only coverage I've seen of it is when a friend of mine, James Bowers, sent me a link to an article in The Guardian. Well, he sent it to a chat that I'm in, and yeah, it's weird to see the lack of coverage this has gotten. Is it unsurprising though? Not really. Because at the end of the day, the big thing of sportswashing is we're here to enjoy the spectacle, we're here to enjoy the event, we shouldn't be focusing on other things, more important issues, because it's all about the spectacle of the event of having this happen in this country. And that in itself is quite a big problem. It's one that motorsports never really had to deal with. It's only been in the past few years as more and more people have been thinking about these issues of social justice in regards to issues such as sportswashing, that people are talking more and more about it. Of course, the advent of social media has also made it a lot easier as well. I mean, if you're talking 17 years ago when we had the first Chinese and Bahrain Grand Prix, I don't think that you would have been able to hear as much of a vocal opposition. Same thing for a Turkish Grand Prix. Same thing for an Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. However, Saudi Arabia, because that was announced in 2020, you are more likely to hear vocal opposition. And it's important that we have people talking about this stuff. It's important that we have people considering this stuff. But it's important at the same time that we consider the sports washing is a wider, more general kind of thing. Like, when I did my video talking about Saudi Arabia F1 race, that was, I think, the video on motorsport and politics that got the most general positive reception. And that's because, deep down, for a lot of people, for a lot of potentially more racist people, it was embedded in the message of being able to talk down regime somewhere in the Middle East. Which is why I say that you need to look at other regimes as well. I mean, that's why I pointed out, for example, Russia. But the Hungarian Grand Prix Formula 1 should be one that's questioned, given the government that is led by Viktor Orban. I mean, heck, you could argue that the existence of a United States Grand Prix or British Grand Prix, in light of governments in these respective countries, could be considered it. Brazil, another prominent example. Bolsonaro government, the planned Rio Grand Prix circuit that seems to not really get much traction, but then the Grand Prix de Interlagos is not called the Brazilian Grand Prix, it's been called the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. So it could be that they're still planning for a race in Rio. It's important that we recognise that these terms can be applied anywhere around the world. But at the same time, it's important that we recognise the particular issues that come from giving prominence in the world of motorsport or in the sporting world or in any kind of cultural world, to give the kind of influence to states such as the Saudi state. And that's no comment in particular about the people of Saudi Arabia. It's not a comment about people who live there. It's a comment about the regime. And that's another thing, as I'm going to wrap this video up. A lot of people will take comments in this video and think that I'm transposing them onto the people of Saudi Arabia. And this is something that is quite important in a lot of discourse, especially talking about the Middle East. Especially when people talk about, for example, the state of Israel and recognition of Palestine. And a lot of people who are trying to be critical of the regime and the state itself and the behaviours of the state end up wrongly attributing it to the people who reside in the country. Make it clear, this is about the regime. This is about the state. It's never going to be possible to just end the ongoing sports washing around the world. But hopefully by taking more and more steps to be at least aware of it, because a lot of this actually bodies, for them, it's about the money. They're happy to host the event as long as they'll get their money back, and as long as the hosts also pay in a large amount to host it. That's part of the reason why F1 managed to become so expensive, and then it ended up being the point that a place like Silverstone could avoid it, could earn enough money to pay their contracts for Formula 1 races. But if there's enough of understanding in the fan base and the fandom for these series, these events, there's enough of understanding within the competitors as well. then hopefully we'll make it some positive changes forward. And thank you for watching.